I sat at my son Derek's dinner table that Sunday evening, still weak from gallbladder surgery 2 weeks prior, when I made the mistake of asking if there was any more pot roast. My portion had been small. Derek didn't say a word. He just stood up, walked around the table with his water glass, and threw the entire thing directly into my face. Ice water dripped from my gray hair down my collar while his wife Sarah and their 2 children stared in frozen silence. The room went completely still, except for the sound of water hitting the hardwood floor. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, cold water soaking through my shirt and running down my neck. My son Derek calmly returned to his seat and cut another piece of his pot roast, chewing slowly as if he'd done nothing more remarkable than pass the salt. His wife Sarah finally moved, grabbing a kitchen towel and bringing it to me with trembling hands. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "I think I should go," I said quietly, dabbing at my face and neck. The children, 8-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Jacob, looked terrified. Jacob's fork hung, suspended halfway to his mouth. Emma had tears forming in her eyes. Neither of them said anything. Neither did Sarah. And Derek just kept eating. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor, breaking the horrible silence. I walked to the front door on unsteady legs, still recovering from surgery, and let myself out. Nobody followed me. Nobody apologized. Nobody said a word. The drive home to my small apartment took 20 minutes. I'd downsized 3 years ago after my wife Patricia died from cancer. Couldn't handle the empty rooms of our house anymore, all those spaces where she used to be. The apartment was enough for me. 1 bedroom, a decent kitchen, a living room with a view of the parking lot. It was clean and paid for, and quiet. But that night, the quiet felt suffocating. I sat on my couch, still wearing my wet shirt, and tried to understand what had just happened. Derek and I hadn't been close for the past couple of years, that was true. He'd been distant, always busy with his real estate business, rarely calling except for obligatory holidays. But this dinner invitation had seemed like progress. He'd called me himself, said Sarah wanted to have me over, said the kids missed their grandpa. I'd believed him. Now I sat there wondering what I'd done to deserve a glass of water thrown in my face like I was some kind of misbehaving dog. I'd asked for more food. That was it. A simple, polite question. My phone rang at 10:30 that night. I almost didn't answer when I saw it was Sarah, but something made me pick up. "Landon?" Her voice was thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sarah, what's going on?" She was crying hard now, struggling to get words out. "I can't do this anymore. I can't watch him treat you like this. You need to know the truth." My heart started pounding. What truth? Derek has been telling everyone in the family that you're difficult, that you're demanding and controlling. He's been doing it for over a year, Landon. He tells people you're starting to lose it, that you're becoming senile and making up stories. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Making up what stories? About helping him with his business. He told everyone that you never loaned him money, that you're confused about that. He's been systematically turning the whole family against you. The $50,000. 10 years ago, Derek had come to me with a business plan for a real estate company. He had the license, the ambition, but no capital. I'd given him $50,000. We'd signed papers. He'd paid me back over 5 years, every cent. How could he claim that never happened? "Sarah, why are you telling me this?" "Because tonight wasn't an accident," she whispered. "He planned it. He told me Thursday night that he was going to put you in your place this week. He's been angry that you haven't been giving him money lately. He thinks you owe him more." I closed my eyes. "I don't owe him anything." "I know, but there's something else." She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "You know Patricia's family? Her sister's estate? The inheritance that came through 6 months ago?" "Yes." Patricia's older sister had died and left a sizable estate to be divided among family members. It was $200,000, Landon. It was supposed to be split between you and Derek, but Derek told the executor that you had plenty of money and didn't need it. He convinced them to give it all to him. He told them you were having cognitive problems and might not manage it well. The room spun. $200,000. Patricia's family money, money that was rightfully half mine. "Please don't tell Derek I called you," Sarah begged. "He'll make my life hell." But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. What he did tonight was cruel, and you deserve to know why. After she hung up, I sat in the dark for hours. I thought about every interaction I'd had with Derek over the past 2 years. Every short conversation, every canceled visit, every time he'd seemed irritated when I called. It all made sense now. He'd been building a narrative, painting me as a declining old man who couldn't be trusted. I finally fell asleep around 4 in the morning, exhausted and heartbroken. My phone woke me at 8 with a text notification. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen. It was a group text to 15 people, including my brother Frank, my cousins, and several old friends from my electrician days. The message was from Derek. Just wanted everyone to know that Dad showed up drunk at our house last night and made a scene in front of the kids. Sarah and I have decided we need to establish boundaries. We're asking everyone to limit contact with him until he gets help for his issues. I read it 3 times. Drunk. I hadn't had a drink in 40 years. Not since my early 20s, when I realized alcohol didn't agree with me. Everyone who knew me well knew that. But how many people in that group text really knew me anymore? Frank lived 2 states away. My cousins I saw maybe once a year. My old work friends had retired and scattered. Derek was systematically erasing my reputation, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I called my brother Frank at 9 that morning, my hands shaking as I dialed. Frank and I had been close our whole lives. Surely he'd listen to me. "Hey, Landon." His voice was cautious, not warm like usual. "Frank, you got Derek's text?" "Yeah, I did. Listen, buddy, I think you need to talk to somebody. Derek's really worried about you." "Frank, I wasn't drunk. I haven't been drunk in 40 years. You know that." A pause. "Derek said you'd probably call with some story. He mentioned you've been having memory problems. Maybe you don't remember drinking?" I felt my chest tighten. "You think I don't remember whether I had alcohol last night?" "I don't know what to think, Landon. All I know is Derek's been telling me for months that you've been changing, getting more difficult. And now, this. Maybe it's time to see a doctor, get checked out." He threw water in my face, Frank. I asked for more food, and he threw his water glass in my face. That's not what Sarah told me when she called this morning. My blood went cold. "Sarah called you?" "Yeah. She said you got aggressive when they tried to talk to you about your drinking. She said Derek was trying to calm you down and you got belligerent." Sarah. The same Sarah who'd called me crying last night, apologizing, telling me the truth. Derek must have figured out she called me. Now he had her lying to the family too. I tried calling my cousin Margaret. No answer. I texted 3 other family members explaining what really happened. 2 didn't respond. 1 sent back a brief message. "Hope you're okay. Let us know if you need anything. Polita, distant, dismissiva." Derek had already poisoned them all against me. 2 days later, I heard a knock on my apartment door at 6 in the evening. When I opened it, Derek stood there with Sarah and my brother Frank. "Can we come in, Dad?" Derek's voice was gentle, concerned. The same voice he'd used when he was a kid and wanted something. They filed into my small living room and sat on my couch. I took the armchair, feeling like a stranger in my own home. "Dad, we're worried about you," Derek began. He had papers in his hands. "We love you, and we want to help." "Help with what?" "Your drinking problem." Derek looked at Frank and Sarah, then back at me. "We think it's time you got some help. Professional help." "I don't have a drinking problem. I don't drink." Frank leaned forward. "Landon, I've noticed you getting more difficult over the years. Shorter temper. More paranoid. Derek's not making this up." "I threw water at you because you were yelling about the food," Derek said calmly. "You were screaming that we'd poisoned you, that the portion was too small on purpose. You scared the kids." "That's a lie. Dad, this is what I'm talking about." Derek's voice stayed maddeningly calm. "You're getting confused about what happened. Sarah and I think it might be early dementia. We've been reading about it." Sarah nodded, her eyes down. She wouldn't look at me. Whatever Derek had done to her after her phone call, it had worked. She was back under his control. Derek pulled out papers and set them on my coffee table. "I've been talking to an elder care attorney. I think it would be good for you to sign over financial power of attorney to me, just as a safety measure, so I can help you manage things." There it was. The real reason for this visit. "No. Dad, you're 68 years old. You just had surgery. Mom's gone. Let me help you. Let me take care of the financial stuff so you don't have to worry." I looked at the papers on the table. Power of attorney. If I signed those, Derek would have complete control over my money. Every account, every asset, everything I'd worked my whole life to build. I said no. Derek's expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw cold anger flash across his face. Then he composed himself and stood up. "Okay, Dad, but we're all worried about you. Maybe you need some time to think about it." After they left, I noticed Derek had taken photos of my apartment with his phone. I'd seen him casually snap a few pictures while we talked. He'd make sure they showed the place in the worst light. Maybe catch some clutter, some dust, Anything he could use as evidence that I couldn't care for myself. I sat there feeling trapped. What could I do? Call the family and explain? They already thought I was losing my mind. Go to the police? For what? Derek hadn't technically done anything illegal yet. My phone rang. It was my bank. Mr. Landon, this is Jennifer from security. We've detected some suspicious activity on your account. Someone's been trying to access your online banking from a different IP address. Multiple failed login attempts using your email and various password combinations. My mouth went dry. When? Starting about an hour ago. We've locked your account as a precaution. Derek. He'd left my apartment an hour ago. He was trying to hack into my bank accounts. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with the bank, changing passwords, adding extra security measures, setting up two-factor authentication on everything. But even as I did it, I felt a creeping sense of terror. My own son was actively trying to steal from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was making coffee when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Landon Fletcher? A woman's voice, professional and serious. Yes. This is Amanda Thompson from Adult Protective Services. We've received a report of concern about you, and I need to schedule a home visit to assess your well-being. My hand tightened on the phone. A report from who? I can't disclose that information, but the person expressed concern that you may be unable to care for yourself and could be at risk. Can we schedule a time for me to come by? I wanted to scream that my son was lying, that this was harassment, that I was fine, but I knew that would only make me sound exactly like what Derek was trying to paint me as. Tomorrow at 2? I said quietly. That works. I'll see you then. I spent the rest of the day and all the next morning cleaning my apartment until it shined, every surface scrubbed, every dish put away, every piece of paper organized. When Amanda Thompson arrived, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a clipboard, she found an immaculate apartment and a fully coherent man. We talked for an hour. She asked about my daily routine, my health, my medications, my ability to manage finances, and cook and clean. I answered every question clearly and thoroughly. Mr. Fletcher, I have to be honest, she said finally. You seem to be managing just fine. Your apartment is clean, you're articulate, and oriented. But the person who filed this report provided some very concerning details about your behavior. My son filed the report. She didn't confirm or deny, but her expression told me I was right. He's trying to take control of my finances, I said. This is part of a pattern. She made a note. I'll put in my report that you're capable of self-care. But Mr. Fletcher, if someone in your family is concerned about you, it might be worth having a conversation with them. After she left, I felt both relieved and more anxious. Derek's plan had failed, but he wasn't going to stop. I was right. 3 days later, a process server knocked on my door and handed me legal documents. Derek was petitioning the court for emergency guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent and unable to manage my affairs. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. I called every lawyer in the phone book until I found Gregory Walsh, an elder law attorney who agreed to see me that afternoon. He was a man in his 50s with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. He read through Derek's petition with a grim expression. This is serious, he said. If he succeeds, you'll lose all legal autonomy. He'll control your finances, your medical decisions, where you live, everything. Can he actually win? He has some concerning allegations here. Claims you've been acting erratically, that family members have noticed cognitive decline, that you've made poor financial decisions. The fact that Adult Protective Services was called, even though you passed the evaluation, doesn't look great. And he's got witnesses lined up, including your brother. What do I do? Fight it. Hard. It'll cost you $5,000 up front for me to prepare your defense. I wrote the check, watching $5,000 of my savings disappear. But what choice did I have? Walsh spent the next week investigating. When he called me with his findings, his voice was grim. Your son is in serious financial trouble. His real estate business is failing. He has $300,000 in business debt. His house is in pre-foreclosure. He took out a second mortgage last year, and he's behind on payments. My stomach sank. How bad is it? He's drowning. And here's the thing about that inheritance from your wife's family. The $200,000 he got 6 months ago, it's gone. Completely gone. He's spent every penny, and he's still in debt up to his eyeballs. I thought about Derek showing up at my apartment, asking for power of attorney, the desperation that had flickered behind his calm facade. Mr. Fletcher, your son is financially cornered, and desperate people do dangerous things. You need to be very careful." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, thinking about the boy Derek used to be. The kid who'd come to me with skinned knees and bad dreams. The teenager who'd wanted to make me proud. Where had that person gone? When had money become more important than family? Derek's social media posts made it worse. He never mentioned me by name, but the meaning was clear. The hardest part of being a good son is watching a parent decline and knowing you can't fix it. Caring for aging parents is a journey no one prepares you for. Sometimes, love means making hard decisions for someone who can't make them for themselves. The comments poured in. Friends and family offering support, telling Derek what a good son he was, praising his patience and dedication. My phone rang. It was Tom, an old friend from my electrician days. "Hey Landon, I saw Derek's post. I'm sorry you're going through a tough time. If you need anything, let me know." "Tom, I'm not going through anything. Derek's lying." A long pause. "Oh, okay. Well, just wanted to check in." He didn't believe me. Why would he? Derek's story was convincing. Devoted son caring for declining father. It was a narrative people understood and sympathized with. I was losing everything. My family, my reputation, my independence. I spent my nights researching elder financial abuse, reading horror stories online. Adult children who'd successfully gained control of parents' assets and left them penniless. Parents who'd ended up in nursing homes against their will. Families destroyed by greed. It happened every day in America. Children who saw their parents as ATM machines, who couldn't wait for the inheritance, who told themselves they deserved it. I thought about Patricia. If she could see what Derek was doing, it would break her heart. She'd loved him so completely, defended him even when I'd questioned some of his choices. She'd never believe her baby boy could do something like this. Maybe that's what hurt most. Not just Derek's betrayal, but knowing Patricia had died, never seeing this side of him. On Friday night, I logged into my bank account to pay Walsh's next retainer installment. I froze, staring at the screen. One of my accounts had Derek's name on it. My hands shook as I scrolled through the account details. It was an old checking account. 15 years ago, when Derek was 19 and starting college, I'd added him as a joint holder for emergencies. In case he needed money and couldn't reach me, we'd never removed his name. The account now held $85,000. I'd been consolidating my accounts, moving money around to simplify things after Patricia died. That $85,000 had been scattered across 3 accounts. Now it was all in one place. The one place Derek had legal access to. I looked at the clock. 8:30 on a Friday night. The bank was closed. I'd have to wait until Monday morning to remove him from the account. I barely slept that weekend. Every time I checked the account balance online, the money was still there. $85,000. But I knew Derek. Once he realized he had access, he wouldn't hesitate. I should have gone to the bank the second they opened Monday morning. I should have been waiting at the door. But I had a doctor's appointment at 8 for a follow-up on my surgery. I couldn't miss it or they'd report it to the insurance company. By the time I finished and drove to the bank, it was 9:45. I walked up to a teller, my heart pounding. "I need to remove someone from my joint account immediately." She looked up my information, and her face went pale. "Sir, I need to get the manager." The manager, a man named David, took me to his office. His expression was grim. "Mr. Fletcher, there was a large electronic transfer from that account this morning at 6:30. $85,000. The account is now empty." The room tilted. "What?" The other account holder initiated an electronic transfer to his personal account. As a joint holder, he had the legal right to do so. $85,000, gone, in seconds. I drove straight to the police station. The officer was sympathetic but clear. "Sir, if he was a legal account holder, this is a civil matter, not theft. You'll need to sue him in civil court." I called Walsh from the police station parking lot. His assessment was equally bleak. "We can sue, but it'll take months and cost you more in legal fees. And the guardianship hearing is in 2 weeks. That's our priority." I drove home in a daze. In my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my financial records. Before this started, I'd had close to $375,000. Now I had less than $275,000. $85,000 stolen by Derek. $12,000 paid to Walsh. More legal fees coming. My life savings, built over 45 years of hard work as an electrician, were evaporating. For the first time in my 68 years, I felt utterly defeated. My son had taken my money. He'd turned my family against me. He was trying to take control of my entire life. And every time I fought back, it cost me more money and made me look worse. I sat there for hours as the sun went down, sitting in the dark, wondering how my life had come to this. Then I thought about something Walsh had mentioned in passing during one of our meetings. Something about the original business loan I'd given Derek. I'd signed those papers as collateral agreements. I got up and went to my file cabinet, pulling out the folder labeled Derek, business loan. There it was, the loan agreement from 10 years ago. $50,000 lent to Derek William Fletcher for starting Fletcher Real Estate Services. Terms of repayment, interest rate, Derek's signature, my signature, and something I'd completely forgotten about. In small print, at the bottom. In the event of default, or as additional security, lender retains first lien position on all business assets of Fletcher Real Estate Services. A lien. I had a legal claim on Derek's business. We'd never formally released it because Derek had paid me back in full. There'd been no need, but the lien had never been dissolved. Which meant, legally, I still had claim to his business assets. My hands shook as I called Walsh, even though it was past 11 at night. Walsh, I found something. Walsh met me at his office at 7 the next morning, coffee in hand, reading through the loan documents I'd brought. This is good, he said, a smile spreading across his face for the first time since I'd hired him. This is really good. The lien is still active. It was never released or satisfied. What does that mean? It means you have a legal claim on Derek's business assets. If he defaulted, or if the business owes you money, you can enforce the lien. He looked up at me. Did the business ever formally pay you back? Or did Derek pay you personally? I thought back. He paid me from his personal account. Said it was easier that way than running it through the business books. Walsh's smile grew. So technically, the business still owes you that $50,000 plus 10 years of interest. The lien gives you priority claim on business assets. But he paid me back. He paid you, not the business that was the actual borrower. See this language here? He pointed to the loan agreement. The loan was to the business entity, Fletcher Real Estate Services, LLC. Derek signed as both an individual and as the business owner. The debt belonged to the business. My heart started to race. Can we do something with this? Let me make some calls. I want to check on the status of his business accounts. 2 hours later, Walsh called me back. Your son has $140,000 in his business operating account. He's also got a business line of credit, with $70,000 still available. And here's the kicker. I pulled some public records. When Derek applied for his business loans, he claimed assets and revenues that didn't exist. He also hasn't paid his business taxes in 2 years. The IRS has a lien too, but yours has priority because it's older. What are you saying? I'm saying, we can enforce your lien. We can file emergency paperwork claiming the business owes you money, and as the primary lien holder, you have the right to satisfy that debt from business assets. We'd need to move fast, before he transfers the money out. Is that legal? Completely. He took $85,000 from you illegally by abusing the joint account. This is you collecting on a legitimate debt. The question is, are you ready to do this? Because once we start, Derek will come at you hard. I thought about the water thrown in my face, the lies told to my family, the stolen inheritance, the $85,000 taken from my account, the guardianship petition that could cost me my freedom. Do it. Walsh moved fast. By the end of the day, he'd filed an emergency lien enforcement action with the court. By the next morning, we had a temporary order. By the afternoon, we had what we needed. As primary lien holder on Fletcher Real Estate Services, I had the legal right to satisfy the outstanding debt. The original $50,000 plus 10 years of interest at 6%, plus legal fees, came to nearly $90,000. But Walsh had argued that Derek's theft of my $85,000 and the costs of defending against his guardianship petition constituted damages directly related to the original business relationship. The judge, apparently fed up with family financial disputes, had granted a broader order. I could collect enough to satisfy the full debt and compensate for damages. Walsh handled the paperwork. By Friday afternoon, $140,000 had been transferred from Derek's business accounts into a secure escrow account in my name. The business line of credit had been frozen to prevent Derek from accessing it. In 3 days, I'd recovered more than Derek had stolen from me. That evening, my phone rang. Derek's number. I answered. What did you do? He was screaming, not even trying to stay calm anymore. You destroyed my business. You took everything. I enforced a legal lien, I said quietly. The business owed me money. I collected it. That was 10 years ago. I paid you back. You paid me personally. The business never satisfied the debt. Your lawyer should have caught that when you took out the loan. I'll destroy you for this. You're dead. Do you hear me? I'll make you pay. Derek, you took $85,000 from me. You stole an inheritance. You turned my family against me. I took what was legally mine. We're done here. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt powerful. The weekend was quiet. Too quiet. I knew Derek was planning something. Monday morning, I found out what. A police officer showed up at my door. Mr. Fletcher, your son filed a report claiming you stole from his business. I need to ask you some questions. I called Walsh. He came over immediately with all the legal documentation. The officer looked through everything, made some notes, and finally nodded. This appears to be a civil dispute, not theft. Your attorney has court orders showing you had legal right to collect on the debt. I'll note that in my report. No charges filed. But Derek had tried. 2 days later, I received notice that Derek had filed an emergency motion to accelerate the guardianship hearing. He was claiming my actions with his business accounts proved I was mentally unstable and financially reckless. The hearing was moved up to 5 days away. I spent those 5 days preparing with Walsh. We gathered medical records showing my competence, bank statements showing my responsible financial management, the loan documents, and lien paperwork proving everything I'd done was legal. But Derek was preparing too. I found out later he'd sent a mass email to the entire family, painting me as the villain. He claimed I'd stolen from his business out of spite, that I was financially abusing him, that he was just a son trying to protect his father from himself. Every single person believed him. The guardianship hearing was held in a small courtroom on a Thursday morning. Derek sat on one side with his lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Patricia Gomez. I sat with Walsh. Derek's lawyer presented their case. Derek testified that I'd become increasingly paranoid and erratic, that I'd made wild accusations against him, that I'd illegally taken money from his business in an act of financial revenge, that I clearly couldn't be trusted to manage my own affairs. Sarah testified, lying through her teeth about my behavior at the dinner. Frank testified about my increasingly difficult personality over the years. Derek even had a psychologist he'd paid to evaluate me for 30 minutes who suggested possible cognitive impairment. Then Walsh presented our defense. He showed the loan documents, the lien, the court orders. He presented my medical records showing no cognitive decline. He showed my bank statements proving responsible financial management. He revealed Derek's financial troubles, his debts, his failed attempts to access my accounts. The judge listened to everything, making notes, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked directly at me. Mr. Fletcher, do you feel you're capable of managing your own affairs? I stood up. Your Honor, I worked as a licensed electrician for 45 years. I managed complex electrical systems, supervised crews, ran my own contracting business for 15 years before I retired. I've managed my finances carefully, my entire life. I've never been in debt. I've never missed a bill payment. I raised 2 children, buried a wife, and recovered from surgery. I think clearly. I make sound decisions. And yes, I'm absolutely capable of managing my own affairs. The judge made a note. Then she looked at Derek. Mr. Fletcher, what is the current status of your financial situation? Derek hesitated. I'm going through a rough patch with the business. How rough? I have some debt. According to the documents presented here, you have $300,000 in debt. Your house is in foreclosure, and you spent a $200,000 inheritance in 6 months. Is that accurate? Derek's face went red. The economy has been tough on real estate, and you believe your father, who has successfully managed his finances for nearly 7 decades, needs you to take control of his money? Silence. The judge looked at both of us. I'm denying the guardianship petition. Mr. Landon Fletcher has demonstrated full competence and capability. He's articulate, oriented, and has made legally sound financial decisions. This appears to be a family financial dispute, not a case of incapacity. Case dismissed. Derek shot up from his seat. This is insane. He's clearly not thinking straight. The judge's eyes went cold. Mr. Fletcher, the hearing is over. Another outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt. Derek stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer hurrying after him. Walsh and I walked out together. You won, he said. It's over. But I knew better. I knew my son. This wasn't over. That night, I had dinner with Walsh to celebrate. We went to a quiet Italian restaurant downtown, ate good food, talked about normal things. For a few hours, I felt almost human again. I got home around 9:30. My apartment building was quiet, most residents already in for the night. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. My apartment had been destroyed. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, contents scattered everywhere. My computer screen smashed, the television knocked over and broken, papers everywhere. My clothes pulled from closets and thrown around, but nothing stolen. My wallet was on the kitchen counter where I'd left it, the cash in my drawer untouched, my watch still on the dresser. This wasn't a robbery, this was rage. On my bedroom wall, in black spray paint, someone had written, "You're dead, old man." I called the police. An officer arrived, looked around, and said what I already knew. "This looks personal, not robbery. Someone wanted to scare you or hurt you. Anyone you can think of who might have done this?" "My son." The officer wrote it down, but I could see he was skeptical. He probably thought I was a paranoid old man accusing my devoted son. I filed the report anyway. Took photos of everything. But I knew the police wouldn't be able to prove Derek did it. And even if they could, it was just property damage. Derek would pay a fine and walk away. That night, I didn't sleep in my apartment. I got a hotel room and lay awake until dawn, listening to every sound in the hallway, jumping at every door closing. I realized something in those dark hours. Derek wouldn't stop. He'd lost the guardianship hearing, lost his business money, lost his control. And men like Derek, when they lose, they get dangerous. I wasn't safe anymore. Not in my apartment. Not in this city. Maybe not in this country. Over the next week, my life became a nightmare. On Monday, I went out to my car and found all 4 tires slashed. The police filed a report but had no leads. On Tuesday, I started getting phone calls at all hours. Unknown numbers. When I answered, nobody spoke, just breathing on the other end. When I stopped answering, they left voicemails. Silent voicemails, dozens of them. The phone company couldn't trace them. On Wednesday, Adult Protective Services showed up again. Another anonymous report claiming I was living in unsafe conditions. When Amanda Thompson saw my still trashed apartment, her eyes went wide. "Mr. Fletcher, what happened?" "Someone broke in. It's in the police report." She made notes, clearly concerned. But I could see the wheels turning in her head. Was I telling the truth? Or was this what a paranoid, declining man's apartment looked like? On Thursday, Derek filed a civil lawsuit against me for unlawful business interference and conversion of assets. He was suing me for $500,000. Walsh looked over the lawsuit and shook his head. "It's garbage. We'll win. But it means more months of legal battles, more depositions, more court appearances, more money." "How much?" "Defending this? Another $20,000 in legal fees. Minimum. Probably closer to 30. I sat in Walsh's office and felt the trap closing around me. Every time I defended myself, it cost money. Every time Derek attacked, I lost more. Even when I won, I lost. "How do people survive this?" I asked Walsh quietly. "Most don't," he said honestly. "Most people in your situation either give in and let their kids take control, or they fight until they're broke. I've seen it destroy families and drain life savings." "I'm sorry, Landon." That afternoon, I went back to my apartment. I'd been slowly cleaning it up over the week, but it still felt violated. I sat on my couch and looked around at the life I'd built. This apartment, this city, this country. What did I have left here? Derek had turned my whole family against me. I had no friends who believed me. The legal system was bleeding me dry. My own apartment didn't feel safe. Walsh's words echoed in my head. Most don't survive this. I thought about Patricia. About how she'd always talked about traveling after I retired. She'd wanted to see Costa Rica. Said she'd read about American retirees living there for almost nothing. Beautiful beaches, friendly people, perfect weather. We'd never gone. Cancer took her before we got the chance. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Countries where Americans could live affordably. Retirement visas, cost of living. Expat communities. Costa Rica kept coming up. Panama, Portugal, Mexico, places where my money would stretch, where I could live comfortably on $2,000 a month, where Derek couldn't reach me. The idea took root. Why was I staying here? What was I fighting for? A family that didn't believe me? A life that had been systematically destroyed? I could leave, start over. At 68 years old, I could build a new life somewhere Derek had never been, somewhere he'd never think to look. Walsh called that evening. The police found no leads on your break-in. And Derek's lawyer is pushing for an expedited discovery process on the lawsuit. They want to depose you next month. What if I wasn't here? I said. What? What if I left the country? Retired somewhere else? Would Derek's lawsuit still matter? A long pause. Legally, yes. But practically, if you're living in another country with no extradition agreement for civil matters, there's nothing he could do. He could get a judgment against you, but collecting on it would be nearly impossible if you're outside U.S. jurisdiction, and all your assets are moved to international accounts. So I could just leave. Landon, are you seriously considering this? I don't know what else to do, Walsh. He's going to keep coming after me until there's nothing left. Another pause. If I were you, I'd take an extended vacation somewhere. Derek can't find you. Maybe that vacation becomes permanent. I'm not saying you should, legally. But personally, sometimes starting over is the only answer. I spent the next 3 days researching Costa Rica. I learned about the pensionado program for retirees. I found expat forums where Americans talked about their lives there. I looked at rental properties, cost of food, healthcare options. On Monday, I made my decision. I called a real estate agent and listed my apartment for sale. The market was good. She said it would sell within a month, maybe 2. It sold in 11 days. A young couple, cash offer, barely under asking price, $195,000. I sold my car, $5,000. My furniture, I sold or donated. Most of my possessions, I gave away. Everything I wanted to keep fit into 2 large suitcases. Books, photos, Patricia's jewelry, some clothes. That was it. I closed my American bank accounts and moved all my money to an international bank with branches in Costa Rica. I applied for Costa Rican residency under their retiree program. I bought a one-way ticket to San Jose. I didn't tell anyone except Walsh, and only at the last minute. You're really doing this? He said when I called him the day before my flight. I am. Derek's going to lose his mind. Let him. I'll be gone. I wrote 2 letters, one to my brother Frank. In it, I explained everything. I included copies of all the legal documents, the loan papers, the lien, the court orders, the police reports. Everything that proved I'd been telling the truth. I told him I forgave him for not believing me, but I couldn't stay in a place where my own family thought I was crazy. I gave him Walsh's contact information if he ever wanted to reach me. The second letter was to Derek. It was 1 sentence. You destroyed our family for money. I hope it was worth it. I mailed both letters on the morning of my flight. That afternoon, I was packing my last items when someone pounded on my door. I looked through the peephole. Derek. He pounded again. Dad! Open the door! I know you're in there. I almost didn't answer, but something made me open the door one last time. Derek looked terrible. His eyes were red. He'd lost weight. His clothes were wrinkled. Dad, please. He pushed past me into the nearly empty apartment. Where's all your stuff? What's going on? I'm leaving. Leaving? Leaving where? That's none of your business. Dad, please. I need help. The business is gone. The house is going into foreclosure. I've got creditors calling every day. I need money. I stared at him. Even now, after everything, all he cared about was money. You had a father who loved you, I said quietly. You had a family. You had everything that mattered. And you threw it all away for money that's already gone. You wanted my money so badly you were willing to destroy me to get it. Well, you destroyed our relationship instead, and I'm done. Dad, please. The kids need help. Sarah's talking about divorce. Everything's falling apart. You did this, Derek. Every bit of it. You chose this path. I'll change. I'll make it right. No, you won't. You'll take whatever I give you, and you'll still want more. That's who you are now. His expression shifted from desperate to angry. You can't just leave. I'll find you. You owe me. I don't owe you a thing. You're my father. You're supposed to help me. I'm your father, not your bank account. You should have remembered that before you threw water in my face. Derek's anger exploded. You can't do this. I'll track you down. You can't hide from me. Goodbye, Derek. I called the police. Told them my son was in my apartment refusing to leave and threatening me. They arrived within 10 minutes and escorted Derek out. He screamed the whole way. I'll find you. You can't hide. You owe me. That night, I didn't sleep at my apartment. I went to a hotel near the airport. My flight was at 6 in the morning, but Derek had figured out I was leaving. He might have figured out when. I changed my flight to a red-eye leaving at midnight. Paid the change fee without blinking. At 10 p.m., I took a taxi to the airport, checked my bags, and went through security. At 35,000 feet, somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico, I finally felt safe. The plane landed in San Jose at 4 in the morning. I stepped out into warm, humid air and felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Costa Rica was beautiful. Even in the pre-dawn darkness, I could see the green mountains surrounding the city. The airport was small, efficient, friendly. Immigration stamped my passport without a second glance. I'd arranged for a rental car. I drove north through the morning light, watching the country wake up. Small towns, coffee farms, jungle. Finally, the Pacific coast. Tamarindo was a beach town, popular with surfers and expats. I'd rented a small house there for 3 months, while I figured things out. The house was white stucco with a red tile roof, 3 blocks from the beach, $800 a month, utilities included. It was perfect. I spent the first week just breathing, walking on the beach, eating at local restaurants, sleeping without nightmares. For the first time in months. The nightmares would come back sometimes, but less and less. I started meeting other expats, Americans and Canadians who'd retired to Costa Rica. Some had come for adventure, some had come to stretch their retirement savings, some had come to escape, like me. Nobody asked too many questions. That was one of the unspoken rules of expat life. People had their reasons for leaving home. You didn't pry. I joined a volunteer program teaching English to local children. Twice a week, I'd go to a small school and work with kids learning their ABCs. They were bright, eager, grateful for the help. It felt good to be useful again. I started attending a small English language church. The congregation was half local, half expat. The pastor was a Costa Rican man named Carlos, who'd studied in California. He preached about grace and new beginnings. It felt like he was talking directly to me. I found a routine. Morning coffee on my porch. Walk on the beach. Lunch at a local soda, the small family restaurants that serve traditional Costa Rican food for $3. Afternoons reading or volunteering. Evenings watching the sunset. I lived on about $2,000 a month. Rent, food, utilities, a few extras. My money would last me the rest of my life easily. 2 months after I arrived, I got an email from Walsh. The subject line was, "News from home." My hands shook as I opened it. Derek had been arrested. According to Walsh, after I left, Derek had become increasingly unstable. He'd shown up at Frank's house in the middle of the night, pounding on the door, demanding money. He'd called Frank a traitor for taking my side. When Frank refused to help him, Derek had tried to force his way into the house. Frank had called the police. But that wasn't why Derek was arrested. While investigating Derek's harassment of Frank, the police had discovered something else. Derek had been embezzling from client accounts in his real estate business. When people hired him to manage property sales, he'd been taking money from their escrow accounts. Not much from each account, just enough that clients wouldn't notice right away. But over 2 years, he'd stolen nearly $100,000 from clients. The police had evidence, bank records, emails, testimony from victims. Derek was facing multiple felony charges: fraud, embezzlement, theft, harassment. The prosecutor was recommending 8 to 12 years in prison. Sarah had filed for divorce 2 weeks after he was arrested. She'd taken Emma and Jacob to her parents' house in Oregon. She'd filed a restraining order against Derek. I read the email 3 times. Part of me felt vindicated. Derek had destroyed himself, just like I knew he would. But another part of me just felt sad. That was my son. I'd held him as a baby, taught him to ride a bike, helped him with homework, walked him through his first heartbreak, and now he was going to prison. Where had I gone wrong? What had I missed? When had money become more important to him than everything else? Frank had tried to reach me through Walsh. He'd finally read my letter, seen all the evidence. He was devastated by what Derek had done. He wanted to apologize, to talk, to maybe visit. I wrote back through Walsh, told Frank I forgave him, that I understood how convincing Derek had been, that I'd love to see him if he ever wanted to visit Costa Rica. 3 months later, Frank flew down. We spent a week together, talking, healing, walking on the beach. He cried when he saw how happy and peaceful I was. "I can't believe you're really okay after everything he did to you," Frank said one evening as we watched the sunset. "I'm better than okay," I told him. "I'm free. Derek tried to take everything from me, but he couldn't take my ability to start over. He's the one in prison now." I'm the one living in paradise. Other family members reached out. My cousins, old friends, they'd all heard what Derek had done. They all apologized. Some asked if I'd come back to the States. I politely declined. My life was in Costa Rica now. 6 months after I arrived, Derek sent me an email. He was out on bail, awaiting trial. The email was long, rambling, desperate. He begged for money for lawyers. He alternated between apologizing and blaming me. He said his life was destroyed, and it was my fault for abandoning him. He said the kids wouldn't talk to him, and that was my fault too. He needed help, and I was his father, and I owed him. I read it once. Then I wrote a reply. Derek, I loved you with everything I had. I gave you opportunities, support, and chances. You chose to see me as an obstacle to money, rather than as your father. You isolated me, attacked me, and tried to steal from me. These consequences are from your own choices. I hope prison gives you time to think about what matters in life. I won't be sending money. I'm at peace now, and I hope someday you find peace too. Goodbye. I blocked his email. I felt no anger as I did it, just sadness and closure. Life moved on. I made real friends. Carlos, the pastor, became like a brother to me. We'd have coffee every Tuesday morning and talk about life, faith, forgiveness. A Canadian couple, James and Linda, became my closest friends. We'd have dinner together every Saturday night. I dated a woman named Maria for a while. She was a Costa Rican widow, kind and gentle. It didn't work out romantically, but we stayed friends. I learned Spanish. Slowly, painfully, but I learned. The local people appreciated the effort, even when I butchered their beautiful language. I found hobbies. I took up painting. I learned to surf, badly but joyfully. I read more books than I'd read in 20 years. I woke up every morning grateful. Grateful for the warm air. Grateful for the sound of the ocean. Grateful for the second chance at life. Derek went to prison. I heard about it through Frank. 7 years. He'd taken a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence. I felt nothing but sadness. Sarah had completely cut ties with him. The kids, now teenagers, wanted nothing to do with their father. They'd learned the truth about what he'd done to me, to his clients, to everyone. They were ashamed of him. Sometimes I thought about what could have been. If Derek had just been grateful for what he had, if he'd valued family over money, if he'd made different choices. But I couldn't change the past. I could only live in the present. 1 year after I arrived in Costa Rica, I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Frank was visiting again, his second trip down. We had cold beers, and were talking about nothing important. You know what amazes me? Frank said. You lost so much, but you seem happier now than I've ever seen you. I thought about that. Derek took a lot from me. Money, family relationships, my home, but he couldn't take the most important thing. What's that? My ability to choose what kind of life I wanted to live. He tried to trap me, control me, destroy me. But in the end, all he did was push me towards something better. Do you think he'll ever understand what he did? Maybe. Prison has a way of giving you time to think. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter anymore. His choices aren't my burden to carry. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. You inspired me, you know, Frank said, watching you start over. Lisa and I have been talking about selling the house, and maybe moving down here when I retire next year. I smiled. You'd love it here. The life I'd built in Costa Rica was richer than I'd ever imagined. My little house had become a home. I'd painted the walls bright colors, filled it with plants and books. I had a garden where I grew tomatoes and peppers. I had a cat, a scraggly orange thing that had adopted me one day and refused to leave. Every Sunday, I'd volunteer at the church, helping Carlos with whatever he needed. Sometimes it was teaching English classes. Sometimes it was helping repair the building. Sometimes it was just being there for people who needed someone to talk to. Tuesday mornings were coffee with Carlos. Wednesday afternoons were beach walks with James and Linda. Friday nights were dinners with my local friends, a mix of Costa Ricans and expats who'd become family. Saturday mornings were surf lessons, where I was still terrible but having fun. My money had grown, not shrunk. Living simply and investing carefully, my nest egg had increased. I had more money now than when I'd left the States, but money didn't matter the way it used to. It was a tool for living, not a measure of worth. I'd learned to measure my wealth differently, in friendships, in peaceful mornings, in the ability to help others, in the freedom to spend my days however I chose. I thought about Derek sometimes, but without anger. He was serving his sentence, hopefully learning something from it. Sarah had moved on, remarried a man named Tom who was good to Emma and Jacob. The kids were doing well, Frank said. They were in college now, studying hard, building lives far from their father's mistakes. They didn't want to meet me. Frank had suggested it, but they'd declined. Too much pain associated with that part of their family. I understood. I didn't take it personally. Maybe someday. One morning, about 18 months after I'd arrived, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "From Derek's son." It was Jacob. He was 19 now, a sophomore in college studying business. "Mr. Fletcher," it began formally. "I don't know if you remember me. I'm Derek's son, your grandson. I wanted to reach out because I've been thinking a lot about family lately. Uncle Frank told me your story, the whole story, and I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry we believed my dad's lies. I'm sorry we didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry we lost years with you." He went on to say he'd been seeing a therapist, working through the trauma of what his father had done. He'd been struggling with trust issues, with his own relationship with money, with fear that he might become like his father. "I'm writing because I want to be different," he wrote. "I want to value people over money. I want to be the kind of man who doesn't hurt his family for personal gain. And I thought maybe, if you were willing, you could tell me how you did it, how you forgave, how you moved on, how you built a new life." I cried reading that email. Then I wrote back. We started corresponding. At first, just emails, then video calls. Jacob was thoughtful, earnest, genuinely trying to learn from his father's mistakes. I told him my story. I told him about choosing forgiveness, not for Derek's sake, but for my own. I told him about the freedom that came from letting go of anger. 6 months later, Jacob asked if he could visit during his summer break. He came for 2 weeks. We surfed. We talked. We walked on the beach. I introduced him to my friends, my life. On his last night, we sat on my porch, watching the sunset. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not giving up on us, for showing me there's a different way to be. You're not your father," I told him. "You get to choose who you become." "I want to be like you," he said, "someone who knows what really matters." After he left, I sat on my porch for a long time, thinking about the journey. From that horrible night, when Derek threw water in my face, to this moment, watching the sun set over the Pacific, having just spent 2 weeks with my grandson. I'd lost so much along the way: money, my home, years of family relationships, a son. But I'd gained more than I'd lost: peace, freedom, a life I actually wanted to live. And now, maybe, a relationship with a grandson who wanted to learn a better way. Derek had tried to destroy me. He'd taken my money, attacked my reputation, turned people against me, threatened my freedom. He'd done everything in his power to break me. And in a way, he'd succeeded. He'd broken the old version of me, the one who stayed in an unhappy situation because it was familiar, the one who let family obligation trap him in toxicity, the one who measured his worth by what others thought of him. But from those broken pieces, I'd built something better: a life of intention, a life of peace, a life where I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. I thought about all the people trapped in situations like mine: adult children manipulating elderly parents, families torn apart by greed, people too afraid or too obligated to walk away from abuse. If they could hear my story, what would I want them to know? That it's never too late to start over. That protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. That people who truly love you won't try to control or exploit you. That money is just money, but peace is priceless. That you don't have to stay somewhere that's destroying you, no matter how long you've been there or who tells you that you should. That choosing yourself, finally putting your own well-being first, isn't abandonment, it's survival. That the people who accuse you of being selfish for setting boundaries are often the ones who benefited from you having none. That leaving doesn't mean you've given up. Sometimes it means you've finally chosen to live. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Another perfect day in paradise. Another day of the life I'd chosen. Derek was in prison. I was free. He'd tried to take everything from me, but all he'd really done was free me to find something better. I smiled, took a sip of my beer, and watched the stars begin to appear. I'd won, not through revenge or anger, not by destroying Derek the way he'd tried to destroy me. I'd won by building a life so good that his betrayal became irrelevant. He couldn't touch me anymore, couldn't hurt me, couldn't take anything else from me. I was 69 years old. I was healthy. I was happy. I was loved. I was at peace. And every single day, I chose gratitude for this second chance at life. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't revenge. It's building a life so good that you no longer care about getting even. My son tried to destroy me, but he only destroyed himself. I'm living proof that it's never too late to start again, to find peace, and to choose yourself when no one else will. If you've ever dealt with toxic family members or betrayal from someone you loved, I want to ask you this. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed and fought, or would you have walked away like I did? Have you ever had to make the impossible choice between family and your own well-being? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps others who might need to hear this message find it. And if you want to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding peace, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself, even when it's hard. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brings you comfort if you're going through something similar, and I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things get, there's always a path forward. You just have to be brave enough to take it. May you find your own peace, wherever that journey takes you. And may you always remember that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what anyone tries to tell you. Take care of yourselves out there. Choose peace, choose life, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Until next time.